bids are in. The gavel has dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right. This is WineBid's podcast dedicated to all things wine value, wine retail, wine auctions, and of course, just wine. I am Jeff McGurn on WineBid's marketing team. With me, as always, is the illustrious Paul Walker, our wine expert and wine auction expert. He knows everything there is to know about wine. Yep. And wine auctions. Yep. And
you're correct on all. Because that's not true.
Pretty sure I'm correct on everything.
Not an expert by any means.
And you are. And so we're going to be rolling right into all things U.S. wine coming into auction this week. We're going to talk about a lot of the interesting stuff we're seeing. I want to start it off by talking about one of Paul's favorite producers, one of his favorite, not his favorite. I do have his favorite producer in the United States here later, but we're going to start off with one of his favorites. This is a 1986 Caymus Napa Cuvée Cabernet Sauvignon Magnum. Are you familiar with the Caymus's Cuvée?
You don't see it nearly as often as the, shall we call it, standard Caymus Cabernet Sauvignon. So that's an interesting bottle. I didn't notice the 86 mag. That's a really cool. That's a nice pick. I love old Caymus too. I thought you were being facetious and trying to talk trash, but I love old Caymus.
No, awesome. Here's what's interesting. In '84, and then for like a few years after that, Caymus expanded their lineup and they added this Napa Cuvée. My understanding is it's basically all purchased fruit that they source from other places. I don't know how much of it is estate. It was basically a more wallet friendly wine to appeal to folks who are interested in their other big bold reds. My understanding though is that this was pretty short lived. It only really lasted until I want to say 88 is when I read that it ended. Yeah. This is kind of a little bit of Caymus history, right?
Sure.
Because, like you said, you don't see this around every day. Kind of an interesting bottle coming into auction, and it's in a Magnum. So, chances that it's going to be a little bit, your chances that it's gone bad or turned are a little bit less coming out of the Magnum. Maybe. Yeah, no,
it's. I wonder too. Back then in the mid '80s, they probably owned quite a bit less land than they do now. It's funny because I always like to look at the write-ups, and fortunately there's a back label photo and it says it's produced from select vineyards located in the heart of the Napa Valley, creating a balance between prime valley, hillside, and benchland areas. So yeah, there's probably a bit of fruit from the estate in Rutherford there in the valley floor. And then I'm curious, I mean, who would know, I wonder, where the hillside and benchland sources are for this wine. But that's really cool. That's a neat pick. And yeah, I'm sure you're, like you say, in Magnum format, it's probably drinking really well. That was a good vintage in the 80s. 85, 87 were phenomenal. 86, I think, are some pretty tannic monsters in there, but I'll bet it's good. A
little bit of Napa history for you there. Something you don't see come along every day. Thought that.
Now you got to tell me what my favorite producer is, because I'm pretty sure you're going to be facetious about this one.
But how dare you? How dare you accuse me of being facetious or joking? I'm nothing but serious. I will say, this bottle, I know this is probably something you'll bid on. You probably already were going to mention.
I haven't already. Yeah,
well, exactly. This is not your favorite producer. I'm going to get to that one, but this is another one that
there's all kinds of stuff.
This is another Caymus 1990 special selection. Here's why I know this one is one that you're watching. I'm pretty sure you're tracking this one. It's because it was, and this is, I know, something you follow. This is like your two favorite things together at last. Caymus, and it was number one wine Spectator in 1994. I'm sure you bought it, because I think that would 94. You would have been in your 40s.
And if that's the case, I'm looking great for my.
You are. Now. You look fantastic. You bathe in oil of Olay. This is. I believe you've said multiple times. You've told me that this is your favorite winery, and if I told anybody,
did I tell you in confidence, or did I?
Yeah, you said if I ever mentioned it, that you would deny it. But this is your favorite winery. You said it's one of Napa's best kept secrets. You go there tasting a lot when you can get in. Apparently it's very difficult to get tastings. There, 1996 Visa Tui.
Oh boy.
Suzanne's Vineyard Cabernet.
And they have a great deli. I'll give you that.
I've heard amazing things about the deli.
I haven't had the wine, so I can't speak for the wine, but
look at you being modest there.
No, I do want to get back to your Caymus special selection pick real quick. The 90 Caymus, I don't know. It's funny because I do actually remember years and years ago somebody talking about how it got this number 190. I don't think it's as good as the 91. I think the 91's always been slightly better than the 90. And did you know what, Jeff? I don't know if you noticed this, but in this week, there's a 3-bottle vertical of the 90, 91, and 92 Caymus special selection. So I think you should step up and bid on that and then host an event, invite some WineBid customers to your house and open those wines, and and then you guys could have your own little podcast all about this little vertical of 90 through 92.
That would assume I know any WineBid. I know WineBid customers. Like I don't.
Aren't you marketing to them? I would imagine you would know.
I'm trying. Yeah, I'm marketing them, but I don't know them. Like, look, if you're a WineBid customer in San Diego and you want to get together and have some.
Here, I'll give you Jeff's cell phone. Where is it?
Just reach out to Paul Walker.
Call it anytime.
WineBid.com.
Any hour of the day or night.
That's right.
No, I don't know. There's also a bottle of 90 Caymus in this week at 190, which seems a little steep. I mean, granted, these older classic, very let's just say top of the line, as it were, producers from the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, however you want to put it. The 90 Caymus, the regular Cabernet, for lack of a better term, Appalachian Cabernet, at 190 does seem a little high. I'd probably gamble on that 86 mag of Cuvée. What is it? 180, right? It was 180.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably go for that in this week if I had to pick all the different Caymus, but
not a crazy price and a really interesting bottle.
No.
Speaking of sort of Napa usual suspects, there is a metric ton, I feel like, of Mondavi from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So it's just a glut of Mondavi coming into auction. Tremendous amount, all sorts of stuff. We've got Botrytis Sauvignon Blancs, Cabs, Pinot Noirs, Cabs from 79, 83, a bunch of 83s, 84, 85, 87, 88, just a ton of Mondavi coming in. Going back to sort of a Napa Valley usual suspect, just a ton of BV. 75, 77, 78, 83, 89, 97, a bunch of Georges de la Tours, 75, 77, 82, 85. I mean, you go on and on and on. There's just a massive amount of some Pinot Noir from BV, just a massive amount of stuff coming in from BV.
Yeah. There's a lot of really sort of classic traditional wines, and that was one of the things I wanted to point out was some of the picks I had were from some of these other notable producers, vintners in the valley, and then things that I haven't seen or don't know much about, but from older vintages. Well, last week there was a whole bunch of Rocchioli in, and then this week there was a bottle of 1990, which it's got their old fashioned label on it. I thought that was really, really cool. If we're moving over to Sonoma. Also, there's a bottle of 1984 Solari Estate Larkmead Vineyards, which I think is really neat because I didn't know that anyone was making fruit from Larkmead. I know Larkmead's been around for a long time, but the 84 Solari was new to me. It's also $35, so it didn't seem like too bad of a price for something vintage and rarity in history. And then there's 3 things from Stag's Leap Winery. There's a 1986 Cabernet. There's 6 of those at 75. That stuck out to me because that's it's got again, talking about 86 vintage, like the Camus, I didn't think it was too bad of a deal. And then their 91 Petite Syrah, and I think it was, I kind of looked up a little bit of history because obviously Stag's Leap Winery has been there forever. And Carl Dumani was the guy that kind of, brought it into the limelight, but he refused to remove the Petite Syrah, which I think is really cool because the Petite Syrah from up there is really, really, really good and always has been excellent. So, and it's still not expensive. The 91 is $30 reserve. So I thought that was cool. And then there was this 1980 Stag's Leap Vintners Pedregal Merlot, which I had never seen before. And I don't know who Stag's Leap Vintners is, if this was some kind of a co-op or something. I know there was a problem with Warren Winiarski and Carl Dumani regarding the Stag's Leap name, and one was Stag's Leap Wine Cellars, and the other was Stag's Leap Winery, and they had to move the position of the apostrophe in a legal battle. The whole thing seemed kind of silly. But anyway, I'd never seen Stag's Leap Vintners before. And there's a 1980 Napa Valley Merlot for $20, and bottle looks fantastic. Those were a few of my older, let's say, old school picks from US this week. I've got quite a few other things too, if you wouldn't mind me mentioning.
Go for it.
Yeah. So there are also, moving up a little bit in time, there's some mid-90s Paulmeyer, which I just think these wines are incredible because Helen Turley was the winemaker in the mid-90s, and there's the 96 Red Blend for $135 and the 96 Merlot also for $135. Just phenomenally amazing stuff. I think the 95 and 94 are some of the best California red wines I've ever had. There is also some 87 Saddleback Magnum of Cabernet for $45, which I thought was really, really wild. And that's an Oakville producer, Niles Vengi, famously his own brand is Saddleback Cellars. So I thought that was a great find. That'll probably get bid up. 87 is a killer Napa vintage, and the wines are drinking great. I just tried 87 Spring Mountain last week, and it was incredible. There's also, moving back to Sonoma, one of my favorites is Raffinelli Zinfandel. I've always had soft spot for this wine. It's just great stuff. It ages really well. There's quite a few other vintages in, but the 01 was really good. That's in at 45 this week. Back to the 90s, 91 Behringer Reserve in for $135. I think this is, phenomenally good stuff from a fantastic vintage. Back to the 80s again, 85 Carmenet in Sonoma, the Estate Red, 3 of those for $35 reserve. I thought was a great deal. 92, there's a couple different things from Con Creek in 92, which I think is pretty cool. There's a limited release Cabernet at 35, as well as the Con Creek Anthology at 30. And I think, these are also some pretty smoking deals. Basically moving on into the modern era with the rest of my domestic picks. And I can mention those as well, if you wouldn't mind, Jeff, or if you wanted to interject. Anyway, there's some great Syrah from Mount Veeder in this week, which we do see, from time to time. But this week there's a little mini vertical of 07, 08, 09, 2010, and 2011. Lager Meredith, really, really good stuff. All sort of in the 35 to 50 range. Really great Syrah from Mount Veeder. It's long lasting, age-worthy, killer stuff. There's some Davis Estates Phase 5 Petite Syrah for $145, which stuck out to me as being pretty wildly expensive, but I think Davis Estates has a special following. Anyway, 2 of those for $145. There's some Mendingwall wines in, including some large format Cabernet Mags, Tourneau Vineyard Cabernet, $170 for the 2015 and $140 for the 2018. I thought that was pretty interesting to see. There's some 2003 Paul Hobbs Michael Black Merlot. It's actually very, very tasty stuff. And 03, kind of an undersung, it was tricky vintage, but there are some great wines. I thought that was quite cool. and it's $50 for the 03 Paul Hobbs Michael Black Merlot. There's a bottle of 17 back to Sonoma, 17 pack Sonoma Hillside Syrah, 2 of those at 40. Then moving down the coast, there's some 2001 Pisoni Estate Pinot Noir, which is just amazing stuff from Gary Pisoni's vineyard down in the Central Coast at 55 a piece. It's got nice bit of age on it. Should be drinking fantastically now. Back up to Napa, there's a Magnum of 09 Realm Beckstoffer Tokalon, which is cool to see the old label because it's obviously back in the late aughts, which you don't see those too much. There's often we see a lot of the more current release stuff, but I haven't seen a Magnum of the 09 Beckstoffer in a long time. And that's at 380. And then back to the 90s in Napa, 95 Robert Craig Affinity. I thought this stuff was always really tasty. It was kind of there were, if I recall correctly, there were like 3 or 4 Robert Craig kind of flagship wines. And the Affinity, I think, was like the Bordeaux style blend. And there's a bottle of 95 at $35, which I'm definitely going to bid on that if no one else does, because it's tasty Cabernet and it should be drinking great. There's also 2010.
What one was that?
It was the Romane Conti Latage, Jeff. That's what you're doing. Don't be confused by all this, California wine. You don't like California wine. This is my territory. So step back. Anyway, 2010 Robert Keenan, the side-by-side reserve, which I am unfamiliar with this wine, but anyway, that stuck out to me. $70 for that. I always think Keenan wines are great. There's all kinds of different, there's Merlot, both the Merlot and the Cabs and the Reserve Cabs are really, really good. Let's see. There's some Saunter moving into the more modern age here. Saunter Clone 685 Redhead Vineyard Cab 2016. There's one of those at 50. And then Eagle Summit Cab 2014 at 60. I think those are excellent wines. I believe Thomas Brown is behind the winemaking in that venture. 18 Seaver family GTS Cab for $245. And then also the 18 Seaver family NLS Cabernet for $135 stuck out to me too. Don't see too much Seaver wine in auction. 18 Senses, one of my favorite Sonoma Coast, another Thomas Brown wine actually. Senses UV El Diablo Chardonnay, 6 of those in at 60. Really, really great wines. They're getting better every year. They got big scores too, if that matters. And then we talked about some of the older stuff. Oh, there's 3 bottles of 19 Stallworth Cabernet, which is a relatively new production. Celia Welch is the winemaker, and those are $395. Not cheap, but I think it's very expensive from the mailing list. And then there's a whole bunch of Turley. I saw this LPR Roussan, which I think is a late harvest wine. I was going to mention that. I was going to mention that because I thought it was super interesting to see Roussan, Roussan. And I don't know what the LPR refers to, but I'm sure it's good, whatever it is. I think, it's got a wax top, nice 375 liter bottle, a very interesting color. It looks like Sauterne. It's pretty cool. And then let's see, a couple other things. T-Vine, which we really don't see that often either. 09 Frediani Petite Syrah. I think Frediani is up in Calistoga, if I'm not mistaken. I always liked their Petite Syrah. I thought it was really, really good. Anyway, 09 T-Vine, 3 of those at 30. And then 07 T-Vine Frediani Syrah, 2 of those at 30. There's a Tyler going back down to Central Coast. I love this stuff. 2012 Tyler Winery Pinot Noir. 1 of those at 31. So already got a bid. That's a pretty fair deal. And then again, back into the modern age in Napa, there is a whole slew of William and Mary. This is some great stuff that Will Segui, who's been with Thomas Brown for a long time. It's Will's own label, his own brand, and great Cabernets and Cabernet blends. There's kind of the second label, Cabernet Sauvignon. There's the 18, 19. There's a whole bunch of it. There's the 18 Shiflet, 19 Shiflet, and the Ranch Red as well from 18 to 19. I think other vintages all sort of in the 65 to 80 range. So those were my picks for California. I had a couple things from Oregon, if you'll permit me.
Go for it.
So there's a bunch of Archery Summit, and I picked 2 of the 03. Well, I should say there's 2 bottles of the 03 Arcus Estate Pinot Noir in for 50. There's other vintages too of the Arcus Estate, but they're quite a bit more expensive. And I thought the 03s were a deal at 50 a piece. There's a lot of Domaine Drouhin in as well. There's a 2017 Edition Limitée Pinot Noir at 65, which I thought wasn't crazy expensive. And then there's a giant bottle. There's a 5-liter of Patricia Green Etzel Block Estate Pinot Noir for $345, which I thought was really cool. I don't think I've ever seen there's mags occasionally, but not anything larger than a mag of Patricia Green Pinot Noir. So that was exciting to see. And those are my domestic picks this week.
Well, with that, it wraps up another episode of Finally Hammered here at WineBid. A lot of interesting stuff coming into auction this week.
Yeah.
Certainly a lot of really affordable stuff. So I know I'm going to be bidding on a number of things. And with that, I am Jeff McGurn, and this is Paul Walker wishing you happy bidding and cheers.
Cheers.